What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence, your premier partner for client-facing and back-office virtual employees. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today in the blue suit and the white shirt, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of Sound Harbor Insurance in Long Island, New York. Big day over there at Sound Harbor. I see that suit from here.
Yeah, no, I'm usually in a tank top, so it's a bit of a change for me. But yeah, I got a couple of interviews going on, setting up founders lunches, which is a new thing I'm working on. So a bunch of big stuff going on. But I'm pumped for the conversation with Lars today because we are going to be talking about a topic around the hospitality industry, which I love. So I'll let you kick it off from there, Stephen.
Yeah, well, let's jump in and welcome Lars Kristiansen, who is the VP of Business Development at KEL Insurance Service. Lars, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Tell us your story, and we usually just like to jump right into it. So tell us maybe your story about how you got to where you are today, and then I know there's some specific topics we wanted to dive into.
Definitely, yeah. So, growing up, had some siblings. My dad was bringing in the main income to our family, and my mom bringing in a second income, was working for an insurance agency that ended up moving out to the West Coast. So she basically said, like, hey, I'm going to do this on my own, and started growing it about 20 so years ago, bringing in just, a second income, to support the family. And over time, I had been growing up seeing the process of her building it, and we had spoken about my interest in it. And I was working up in New York City, kind of bouncing around startup jobs, not loving it, and just made the call one day. I was like, I'm ready to rock. Like, let's get me licensed. Let's start. Let's begin growing this into what it could become. And it's I think I'm coming up on year 6 or 7 now with her. So it's been quite a ride, struggle, and a lot of fun too.
That's awesome, man. When you first started, 6-7 years ago, did you have any prior experience in like sales or insurance prior to that? Like, what got you excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, I went to school for marketing, and I had worked some sales and marketing jobs up until then. So I feel like from a sales perspective, I definitely had a good knack for just, a relationship style business. But also as a side passion, I write music and I DJ, and I was doing that in New York a lot. And I just love nightclubs and hospitality in general. So I think that match kind of gave me that fire and fuel. Like, okay, these are people I know, I've met, and like people I actually want to help. And that kind of gives me, like a good why to keep me going. So, yeah.
Okay. So I love that. And the fact you were in marketing prior, or you studied it, was there anything that you studied from marketing that translated really well into the insurance space and like going after the hospitality industry specifically?
Yeah, I mean, with growing the agency, it's all been a grassroots type of thing. And I would say the biggest thing is, it's an old industry that's very like, I guess you would call it like paper and pen. And I thought bringing my knowledge of like digital marketing and rebranding the business, and just even, getting out on social media and blogging was a huge upgrade. My mom understands the operational, but, it's an old industry, as you guys know, and
Sure.
Bringing that new flavor, I think, was what translated really well.
So backing up to when you started, what did the agency look like? Was it just your mom? Was there a team? What did that kind of look like? And I have a follow-up question to that, but I'm just curious, what did it look like before you joined?
Sure. Yeah. It was just my mom and a few family members who had done some part-time help. But as far as running it, she had just essentially been building up her book from ground up and managing, her book of business. I don't know exactly at what age she was when she was going through this, but, from an ambition perspective, like me being young and hungry, I think for her it was more important to just like be able to provide for the family and
Sure.
have that second income versus like, I want this to become a monster and like, crush it. I think, is more important for her to just focus on having good quality clients and servicing them really well.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. As people who would listen to the show, and Sean certainly knows, I came from a family agency. The reason that my agency exists is because I left a family agency. So I know two things very well. One, how hard it is to work in a scratch agency and start a scratch agency. And two, how hard it is to join a company that might have older practices and might have older thinkings of processes, procedures, bringing in new ideas, like you're talking about website development, all of those things.
Right.
And I want you to share your experience with that as you're talking to somebody who might be listening to this, who's in that exact situation. Someone who has joined either a family agency, which there's tons out there, and they're trying to bring that next generation, trying to bring that new flavor, or joined an agency that they're looking to take over, maybe considering going scratch because of some of the difficulties they're having. What would you say to some of those people and tying in your experience?
Definitely. So from my experience, right, working with a family member directly, I had the freedom to explore whatever avenue I wanted to choose in marketing. The difficult thing with, for example, like a parent who can be stuck in their ways or like in an old industry, it really is just an actions speak louder than words thing. So, I've failed so many times trying X, Y, and Z, and I had to just kind of bring it to the table and say, here's why it works and here's it working. And then it doesn't resonate right away. You kind of have to continually show, progress and like, here's what it's doing, here's where it's coming, here's the money coming in, and just reiterating and showing, hey, this is working. This is what growth looks like. And I think over time, in my case, it was convincing my mother, like, we should put money into this, here's why, and like, and showing that return over time, she came around to it. And I think for anyone watching this, you really got to ABC test stuff, and if you don't have money to start with, you get on YouTube and get on a pod and look at this podcast and listen to industry experts. And I think there's like a famous saying, if you can't run, walk, if you can't walk, crawl. And that's kind of what it is. It's like, if you got to write blogs because you can't pay anyone to do something, hey, that's better than doing nothing.
Yeah. One last point, Sean, I want to make on that before we move on is there's a lot of people in our circles that we talk to that are in your situation of whether they join the family business or they join an existing agency that they're taking over and they have a great team, but maybe the team's been there for 20, 30 years. And to your point, I think one of the most powerful things you said was it's all in like the proof of like, hey, we're going to do this and this is what it'll benefit you. This is what it'll benefit the company. And this is why we're going to make these changes. And the first thing that I think of is how that correlates with us talking to our clients. Hey, we looked at your current plan and we're going to offer this. And these are the differences. And here's why we want to offer it. When you're talking to your team or existing family agency, whatever, insert here, it's the same type of mentality. So I think that's such a great point that you bring up about, showing what's in it for them, showing what it means. And that can go whether it's a teammate that we just brought on or an existing person, whatever that is. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because also too, Stephen, you got to think about it. Like, let's say roles reversed. We know how hard it is to build an agency from absolutely zero. Imagine doing this 20 years and then you bring someone in from your family who's young and
100%.
energetic, but doesn't have a ton of experience. And they're like, hey, yeah, I want to try this, this, and this. It's going to be $5,000 to $10,000. And you're like, wow, I've been doing this 20 plus years. You know what I mean? So like, and obviously as a leader, you have to be able to let them have some of the freedom that Lars spoke about, right? But I love that Lars touched on, he showed them a plan. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how much it's going to bring in. This is how much it's going to cost. And even if we're off by a little bit, it's still going to be profitable in the end. If not, it's going to be a great thing that we tried to test out. So I think I think it would be in the leader's best interest to question it a little bit, but as long as the person working with them presents a solid plan, I mean, then it's off to the races from there, Anyway, all right, Lars, I wanted to talk about your niche in the hospitality sector. Okay.
Sure.
And you touched on a little bit of how you found the niche. Is that all you do is hospitality? Do you dabble in anything else, or is that like 90+% of your focus? I'm just curious on that.
99% hospitality.
Love
I
it.
mean, the 1% would be like we write somebody's nightclub, they own a commercial building somewhere, and we're already
Gotcha.
their agent, and we'll just, write that. But we really, who knows what the future holds, but I feel just because we're a two-man show, it's what we know best, and we kind of
Yeah,
just stick to that lane.
that's great. And how do you go about prospecting for this class specifically? Is it networking? Is it cold calls? Is it a mix?
Yeah, I mean, it's all grassroots. For me, it was cold calling, but the tough thing about cold calling in hospitality is, managers are showing up to the bar at 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and you're almost done your week. So I moved back to more email marketing and just kind of, I've been pretty good at using the census data website, and I can go in and see where like business economy is in different cities. And then I'll go to like using AI, and I'll go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, give me a list of 50 nightclubs in this town. And then from there, I go into the websites, I get the contact info, and yeah,
So
so
you're doing this on a national level.
yeah, so we're licensed in 25 states, I believe, right now. So if you think about our book, think about the major nightlife cities. You got New York, Miami, plenty in California, Texas, and then even the Midwest, Louisville, Nashville. We do write stuff in rural areas and other states, but that's where the bulk of the nightclub business is.
So many questions. All right, what
Sure.
made you go? What made you go that route of national versus keeping it local within your state?
That is a great question. I think based on what my mom's book was already,
Mhm.
and just in the beginning, it was easier to find So I targeted nightclubs because I knew those better, and I felt I could and I
Gotcha.
could talk to them better. Also, um, being a small agency, the nightclub policies tend to be like larger. Not to say we really care about size, but in the beginning, it seemed better for me to try to target them to increase my income so that I could reinvest into the business. So I basically went like, okay, what are the big cities, and started there that have nightlife, and then I started going smaller from there.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
then I know you mentioned email marketing. What kind of things, email marketing wise, were you doing to prospect for these?
I've tried a few different things. Sometimes I would just say like, "Hey, this is who I am. This is our family agency." Sometimes I would, so COVID was, hospitality got slammed during COVID, and
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you are in the restaurant sector, and liquor liability rates have really shot up, and they've been really tough on a lot of bar owners. So what I was doing was I was trying to be less salesy and just say, hey, like, here's what's going on, and be, a source of information. Here's what's happening in your state with rates, and here's why. And call me if you want to chat more. And, and I think people like that I wasn't trying to sell them. I think they enjoyed that I was just, hey, here's information. Like, we know you hate insurance, but I'm here to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So besides the email marketing and the cold calls, are you doing any networking, or no, because it's more
Yeah, yeah.
national? Yeah.
We exist. So when I first started, I went out. My mom sent me by myself. I had no knowledge. I had just gotten licensed to the nightclub and bar show in Vegas. I had an
Mm.
old, wrinkly, fold up, banner that she had from like 2005, and I was so unprepared. And I got like a few clients from it, but I mean, I knew right away. I was like, wow, I did not plan this at all.
Yeah.
So last spring we went back out, and she came with me, and we came with all new swag and like awesome backdrop and QR codes, and was very well prepared. And that was really, really great. But trade shows are a big expense, and but the great thing about trade shows is you get to meet people in person, which is awesome.
So,
ahead,
sorry,
Sean.
Steve, one more.
No, go ahead.
So out of the email marketing, cold calling, the trade shows, what do you think has had the biggest impact on prospecting? Like if you had to get rid of two of those and keep one, what would you focus on the most?
It's so hard to say. I mean, email marketing is, if you're like me and you're a one-man show, and I would say email marketing is the way you can hit more people faster. If you've got some help on your side, I would definitely run with cold calling. I know it's an old way, but this is a relationship business, and like, you got to get on the phone. You can't be afraid to talk to people. And sometimes, just one good conversation, they might even just want to work with you.
For sure.
So.
For sure, I agree with you on that. And one thing with cold calling, anybody in the hospitality sector, like you touched on, you'll get a ton. Before you even speak to the owner, you'll probably call the business at least 5 times, because they'll say, "Oh, John's not in. He comes in at 5 p.m. on Thursday," and then you got to follow up multiple times till you finally get John on the phone. So you might call 5 times before you even get to pitch him.
And you'll usually get either the manager who might not even be involved in the insurance. They may be. It depends on how they operate the business and how
100%.
hands-on the owner is.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody, no matter what their niche is, no matter how many niches they have, around taking their agency nationwide? I think it's like super cool, because Sean asked like, hey, well, like, what type of networking are you doing? And I'm very centralized to my area in our agency. And I think of like, well, I go to my chamber meeting and this and that. And you're like, no, I'm going to Vegas and going to this direct where my customers are, where my prospects are. It's just so different. What would you say about that to people that want to try to do that to the next level, whether it's a niche, whether they're just trying to, generally write in other states?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess from my experience, because hospitality tends to be in those big cities, it makes sense. I really think it just depends on that niche. Like if there's so many State Farm and Farmers agencies, so it makes sense to be, like domiciled in an area. But I guess it just depends on whatever lane you choose to go in. But I don't see why you wouldn't go, national, unless your business is people coming into your office to sit down with you face to face. For me, everything's pretty much digital, over the phone, through email. I do go to see clients and I see their venues, but I don't see why you wouldn't do national unless that was the nature of your business, with them coming to a physical office, which I feel is less and less these days.
Yeah, I think it stems down to, like, in the hard market we're in, is carrier access, right? Like, I have carriers that give me appointments in New York, but if I want to write in another state, they'll say, hey, you have to go through a whole new appointment process. Mm-hmm. And we're not appointing in that state right now. So as far as like carrier access is concerned, like I know for New York, for example, in the hospitality space, there's a bunch of different carriers depending on if it's a nightclub, fine dining, casual, restaurant, takeout, all different carriers for all different types. So what's your carrier access like? Do you have like 2 or 3 that are like your top ones, and were they like easy with you getting appointed in all those states?
Yeah. Okay. So that was kind of making more sense for me. So in hospitality, it's so limited, especially, we write, like I mentioned, a lot of nightclubs, live music venues, high risk stuff. So there's already limited access. So yeah, there are
a lot of not admitted.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So a lot of the carrier programs will be directly appointed to, and they have a list of states that we happen to do most of our business with them in. And then if they're not in that state, you kind of go out to a broader wholesaler, using a wholesale broker. Like we have one on the East Coast, we have one in the Midwest and the West Coast, and we try to, space it out. So like the West Coast guys are getting the West, and, vice how it goes.
That's smart.
So, that then comes down to who those wholesalers are appointed and do business with. So it is a really limited space in that aspect.
That makes much more sense. Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you're going after anything admitted, there's mutuals you have to worry about.
Right.
There's a ton of different competition, but with non-admitted, you're way more limited. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like different classifications in hospitality. So if you're a big nightclub, you got bottle service, there's really not that many players in that space.
Yeah. Lars, has there been any tech that you've implemented or leveraged that has helped you with this niche specifically? Like, one thing I started using, and I know I'm kind of late to the game on it, is like Wonderwrite to help with like the supplemental application process. Is there anything that you've leveraged technology-wise that has helped with this niche specifically?
The only thing that that's helped me is I've moved our website to Squarespace so that like prospective clients can go on our website and complete the application on their own time. And so without even speaking to them, I will sometimes just get submissions. And it's something that saves me a lot of time. And, agents who are watching this, that could be, a good way to save yourself some time. So you're not constantly cold calling, the leads come to you. And then we also put an option, just for like a contact form. But otherwise, nothing that I've really implemented for the insureds. I do use a lot of like AI in my own prospecting, but nothing that's like through our website other than just form submissions.
Gotcha. And on those applications, is it like a short form? Is it a long form, like a supplemental app? Or
I give them an option. I got like a little, our website will like walk you through and it'll say like, take me to your online application, or I want to speak with an agent. So like, it's your choice. Yeah. You can do the long one, or you can just put your information in and I'll call you.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So walk us through COVID. Walk us through that unexpected, obviously, change in your business and your niche. There was a lot that happened there. How did you guys wear that, and what were some experiences you had from that? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I was still very brand new. And so COVID happened and I was like, oh God, here we go. First thing was everybody started calling, trying to submit a claim. Like, we got shut down, in XYZ state. Are we covered? From what I understand from the SARS epidemic, a lot of the carriers put a exclusion for a communicable disease. So a lot of these claim submissions were being declined, which was rough. A lot of people weren't sure about whether they should cancel the policy or not. We tried to avoid that as best we could because we weren't sure. Like, we weren't sure if this thing was going to get lifted in 2 days, 3 months. And, we just, we said, like, if you can ride it out, you should. And so what we tried to do, and I think we helped some insureds, it really came down to what their agreement was we would go back and submit and say, hey, this policy was written on these sales. And then we would show them the COVID sales, which were much lower. And if they weren't on 100% minimum and deposit policy, we were able to get some of them money back. But some of the other ones were on that type of policy and unfortunately couldn't get them any cash back. So it was tough. And I think the frustration really came after, because liquor liability rates really went up because a lot of claims came through, I guess, from states that were staying open and people were kind of like piling into those states. So from what we understood, where a lot of those situations were going to the court years later, and that's why like it really tightened up and liquor liability rates just skyrocketed. And, the last few years have been, kind of just getting an earful from everybody and just having to,
sure.
Hey, this is the best we can do. And don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Steven and I have talked about it a bunch of times before.
Yeah.
Like, the hard, and you touched on it earlier on, Lars, is like, it is an extremely hard market right now, especially in the hospitality space still.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of pain in the market. So there's a ton of opportunity. And
Right.
Stephen and I probably say that every other episode at least. So I think, I mean, I think it's a great niche to go after because like, you know, you have the general liability, you have the liquor liability, assault and battery, which is tied in with the liquor. You have commercial property, you have workers' comp, you have employee benefits, you have excess policies. I mean, there are a ton of different policies that an independent agent can write for
Right.
a business like a restaurant or a bar or a nightclub. And like you said, if you're targeting the non-admitted stuff, the premiums are even higher on those types of things. But like Lars said, you just got to watch out for those minimum earned premiums.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
non-admitted market. There's not a lot to work with.
For sure.
But it's the only world I've been in on insurance. So
Yeah.
Lars, what's the vision? What's the vision for the agency if we were to do this podcast in the next 5-10 years? What would what would you want that to sound like? What do you want the agency to be like? What's the big picture?
Yeah, I think the big picture, one, really over the next few years, I don't know if it's 2 years, I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, would like to grow it so my mom could retire. Would love to give her that for her, giving me this opportunity. I do still need her help. She is very intelligent and really knows the industry in and out. But the thing that she always kind of hammered into my brain, especially with us being a family business, is people like us because of quality of our quality of service. So as much as I want to grow the agency and, be able to hire young people who are hungry and give them other opportunities, I don't want to grow too fast that I'm losing that quality of service because let's be real, nobody picks up the phone these days. They like us because we pick up the phone. I always say you can call, you can text me, you can email me. And that responsiveness goes a long way. So especially anyone who's watching that is maybe aspiring to be an insurance agent, I tell you, that's the quickest way to keep your clients is just, be their agent, like act like you are their agent, you're there for them. If I'm at a wedding or something, I'll just text my client, hey, I'm at a wedding. Can I call you tomorrow? And just that level of responsiveness is huge. So in 5 years, if I can keep that, I'd love to just be able to expand and, like I said, like hire people. At that point, I'll be older, some people younger than me who are hungry for business and, just give them opportunities for work and, just be a leader in this hospitality space. That's the main goal.
Love it. I love it. Lars, I got to ask you because I'm enjoying this hospitality conversation too much. What, on the prospecting side of things, when you go to present the proposal at this nightclub, what are like the most common wedges that you're driving? Like, coverage wise, like what do you see the most of where it's like, really you have a 50,000 A and B sublimit? Like what are some of the things you're seeing that's really common?
Yeah. It really depends. Right now it's really tough. Rates are really high. So most of the time, a lot of insureds are really looking at the bottom line. They're really looking at, because you got to remember, this is a high overhead industry. So like the profit you take home from owning a bar is already pretty slim. Now they've got this thorn in the side, which is expensive liquor liability. So they're really looking at the bottom line more often than not. But being able to be on like a hospitality specific program that offers that like a high sublimit of assault and battery is really good. Definitely a great selling point. Sometimes it depends on the deductible. There are programs who will write first dollar coverage, zero deductible, and that is really solid selling point. But each venue, each state is different, and each bar owner cares about certain thing. Like I'd love to sell more cyber liability. I think a lot of people need it, but people are trying to cut coverage right now and just give me what I need, not excess.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And like you said, I think the curveball is like every state is different.
Right.
Like in New York, for example, like I'm just thinking off the bat, like the A and B sublimit comes up 9 out of 10 times, you know. Firearms exclusion is like another big one we always see. And then even like in New York, it's not really in other states, but like a subcontractor limitation where if the restaurant or bar owner hires somebody to come in to do work on their building and they get hurt, and they try to bring the restaurant into a lawsuit, they have no coverage because they have that exclusion on their policy. It's like little things like that. But I totally agree with you, because of all the pain in that sector right now, they're not looking at that as much. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, and to be honest, a lot of the exclusions, like you mentioned, the firearms exclusion, like it's tough to get somebody to lift that. Depending on like the size and the type of venue, they have, monoline policies now in place, unfortunately, because of a lot of the nightclub shooting. So there are markets now that can like add that on. It's always a really tough conversation. But it's a lot of, you'll see a firearms exclusion pretty often with most carriers in this space. Yeah.
Good stuff, Sean. I don't think we missed anything there. That was great, Lars. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we look to wrap it up?
No, this has been great. I've been enjoying your guys' podcast. I'm really glad I found you. I've been trying to run through some episodes. It's appreciate what you're doing, and I think for any guys who are maybe in same age range as me or trying to start their own agency, this is a great place for information. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Thanks, Lars. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Sean, you good over there? It sounds like someone's breaking into your office.
I'm good.
All right, everybody. That's another episode of the Scratch Agency podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.